You're a disgusting freak who doesn't belong here. Karen's voice echoed through the packed federal courtroom as she pointed at a small girl in a pink wheelchair, her face twisted with hatred. The room fell into stunned silence. 12-year-old Emma Martinez sat frozen, tears welling up as the venomous words hit her like bullets. Karen, the powerful HOA president of Maple Grove Estates, was out for blood and didn't care who saw it before watching full story. Comment below from where you watching. Also like and subscribe for more stories. But what Karen didn't know, what no one knew, was that the girl she had just humiliated was the daughter of someone very powerful, someone sitting quietly in the back, watching everything with cold, calculating fury. And Karen, she was minutes away from destroying her entire life in one of the most public and spectacular ways imaginable. This wasn't just a court hearing. It was a trap, and she had just walked right into it. 12-year-old Emma Martinez rolled slowly into the courtroom, her small hands gripping the wheels of her bright pink wheelchair. She wore a navy blue dress, her hair neatly tied in a braid, and though her movements were careful and deliberate owing to her cerebral palsy, her eyes held a quiet strength. She wasn't just there to watch, she was there to stand up for herself, even if her voice would never be loud. Every head turned as she made her way down the narrow aisle between the benches. Murmurs rippled through the courtroom, some whispered with sympathy, others with curiosity. But Emma didn't meet their stares. She was focused, steady, and brave. What no one knew was that Emma's mother, Sarah Martinez, was already in the room, seated in the back row, wearing plain clothes and no visible sign of authority. She looked like any other concerned parent, but underneath her calm expression was a storm building, a fire that had been smoldering for months. Sarah had recused herself from this case for ethical reasons, but that didn't mean she was powerless. In fact, she was the last person Karen Henderson should have wanted in that courtroom. Emma's presence wasn't about sympathy. It was about truth, justice, and courage. This day had been a long time coming. For 6 exhausting months, she had endured bullying, discrimination, and cruelty at the hands of one hateful woman. Now she had a chance to tell the world what had happened and watch her abuser answer for it. The courtroom buzzed with anticipation as Emma took her place near the front. Next to her attorney, her mother remained at the back, watching, waiting, and calculating every word and action, because today, they weren't just here to win, they were here to expose. The heavy double doors creaked open and instructed Karen Henderson like she owned the entire courthouse. She wore a cream-colored designer suit that screamed money and arrogance. Her platinum blonde hair was styled to perfection, not a strand out of place. Her heels clicked with precision against the marble floor, echoing like a warning shot. Karen's face twisted in visible disgust the moment her eyes locked onto Emma. Oh, great. She scoffed loudly enough for the entire courtroom to hear. They actually brought the little freak. Gasps and murmurs broke out across the room. Some heads turned toward the judge, expecting immediate correction. But Judge Williams hadn't even called court to order yet. Karen smirked at the reaction. She wanted them to hear. She wanted them to squirm. That's what she always did, use her HOA power to bully, shame, and dominate. She sashayed toward the defense table, ignoring her own attorney's horrified expression. To her, this was just another HOA meeting, another opportunity to steer a family into submission. What she didn't realize was that her world was teetering on the edge of collapse. Behind her smile and smug confidence was a ticking bomb, because the child she just publicly mocked wasn't just another disabled girl. She was the daughter of a woman who had spent her life fighting monsters like Karen in courtrooms far more brutal than this. And today, Karen had just brought the fight to the wrong battlefield. 6 months earlier, Emma Martinez had simply wanted to play on the swings. It was a warm Saturday afternoon, and the community playground at Maple Grove Estates was bustling with children laughing and running. Emma rolled up in her pink wheelchair, eyes wide with excitement. But before she could even reach the ramp, a shrill voice cut through the air like a knife. "You can't be here," Karen snapped, storming toward her like a vulture in heels. "This playground is for normal kids." Emma froze. I just want to swing," she whispered. Karen's eyes narrowed. "You're a safety hazard. What if you fall? What if someone trips over your ... thing?" she said, pointing to the wheelchair like it was some kind of roach infestation. "You'll drive down our property values with that circus act." Shocked parents looked on, unsure whether to intervene or not. Emma went home in tears. That night, her mother Sarah filed a formal complaint against Karen with the HOA board. What followed was a relentless war. Karen responded by filing bogus violations against the Martinez family, fines for unkept lawn edges, non-standard and unauthorized wheelchair ramps. She held secret meetings with other residents, spreading lies about Emma being aggressive and disruptive. When that didn't scare them off, Karen started following Emma to and from the mailbox, recording videos and muttering insults just loud enough to be heard. She called Emma a burden, a liability, a mistake, each act more vile than the last. And still, Sarah didn't retaliate. Not yet. She gathered documentation, recorded statements, collected every shred of evidence with the cold patience of someone who knew exactly how to destroy a person the legal way. And now, 6 months later, that evidence was about to explode in a courtroom that Karen thought she controlled. But Karen didn't know the truth. The girl she had tormented wasn't just a target, she was the fuse, and it was already lit. Judge Williams finally entered and called the courtroom to order. The moment the hearing began, Emma's attorney stood and methodically laid out the case: months of harassment, discriminatory conduct, HOA abuse of power, and targeted emotional damage inflicted upon a disabled child. The room listened in horrified silence. Photos were shown, videos played. Witnesses recounted Karen's behavior. Every word confirmed what Emma had endured. The judge listened with a tight jaw. Even the jury looked visibly uncomfortable. But Karen couldn't stay quiet for long. "This is ridiculous," she suddenly blurted, leaping to her feet. "That girl is a menace to the community." "Miss Henderson," Judge Williams said sharply, "please sit down and allow your attorney to represent you." But Karen was spiraling. "No, I want everyone to hear the truth. Look at her." She pointed a trembling accusatory finger at Emma. "She can't even walk right. She drools. She scares the other kids. And somehow I'm the villain here." A collective gasp rippled through the room. Emma's lips quivered, but she didn't cry. "Not yet." Karen stormed forward, practically foaming at the mouth. "That broken child is why property values are tanking. She doesn't belong in Maple Grove Estates. She belongs in an institution." "Miss Henderson," Judge Williams thundered. "One more outburst and you'll be held in contempt." Karen cut him off. "You're all thinking it. I'm just saying it. Why should normal families have to bend over backward for someone else's mistake?" And then came the final blow. Karen marched toward Emma's wheelchair, towering over the girl with cruelty blazing in her eyes. "You're not special," she spat. "You're not wanted. And your mother, she's probably ashamed of you too." Emma's composure finally shattered. Tears streamed down her face, her shoulders shaking. In the back of the courtroom, Sarah Martinez slowly stood up. She didn't shout. She didn't make a scene, but her eyes were steel. Her silence was thunder. Karen didn't notice her. She was too consumed by her own hatred to see the danger standing 10 feet behind her, watching, waiting, and judging. Because now the trap was sprung. The room had descended into stunned silence, broken only by Emma's quiet sobs. Karen smirked in satisfaction, still oblivious to the iceberg dead ahead. From the back row, Sarah Martinez stepped forward, her footsteps calm but filled with purpose. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a leather case. "Your Honor," she said in a voice that was smooth, crisp, and carried authority like a thunderclap, "I request permission to address the court." Judge Williams raised an eyebrow. "Ma'am, this is highly irregular," but then he saw the badge. The moment Sarah opened the case, everything shifted. Conversations halted. Jaws dropped. Judge Williams stared at the federal credentials. His eyes widened. "Your Honor," Sarah said again, louder now. "I am Federal Judge Sarah Martinez, United States District Court. The child that woman just spent 20 minutes terrorizing, that's my daughter Emma Martinez." The courtroom exploded with gasps and murmurs. Phones came out. People began texting. Karen, standing just feet from Emma, turned around slowly, her face drained of all color. "No, no, no, no," she stammered. "You're lying." But the badge didn't lie, and Sarah's icy glare said it all. "I've been here the entire time," Sarah continued, stepping forward as Karen instinctively backed away. "I recused myself from this case because I wanted due process. But after that performance, I will not remain silent." Karen stumbled into the defense table, her knees wobbling. Her lawyer looked like he wanted to disappear. "Everything you said, everything you did, it was recorded. In a federal courtroom, witnessed by a federal judge, you've just committed multiple federal crimes in front of half the legal community." Sarah's voice, now ringing across the marble walls, was surgical harassment of a minor, civil rights violations, hate speech against a protected group, and public endangerment. Karen opened her mouth, but no sound came out. "You thought you were bullying a helpless girl," Sarah said, her expression unwavering. "But what you didn't realize, Miss Henderson, is that you were walking straight into your own downfall." Karen collapsed into her chair, hands trembling because, in one instant, everything had changed. And now, justice had a name, and it was Judge Sarah Martinez. Karen sat frozen in her seat, pale as a ghost, while the entire courtroom held its collective breath. She had been loud just moments ago, confident, cruel. Now her hands trembled against the wood of the defendant's table. Judge Williams leaned forward, struggling to maintain composure. Judge Martinez did not realize Sarah raised a hand. "I understand, Your Honor, but I'm invoking my right to make a formal statement for the record." Karen's lawyer, finally shaking off his paralysis, tried to speak. "Objection. Overruled," Judge Williams said without hesitation. Sarah stepped closer, facing the courtroom but keeping her eyes locked on Karen. "Let the record show," she began, "that Miss Karen Henderson has just committed multiple federal crimes under Title II of the Americans with Disabilities Act, as well as Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act. Her speech and behavior fall under federally defined disability, discrimination and harassment of a minor, She paused, and every word of it was recorded. In a federal courtroom, in front of a federal judge, Karen's mouth twitched. I didn't know. I didn't know who you were, she whispered, voice shaky. That's exactly the point, Sarah snapped, her tone hardening. You treated my daughter like trash because you thought she was powerless. You believed no one would protect her, that there would be no consequences. The weight of Sarah's words settled over the courtroom like a stone. You used your position to harass a disabled child, to terrorize her and her family. You exploited your authority to spread hatred. And now, the law you've twisted to hurt others is going to crush you. Karen covered her mouth with both hands, tears pooling. In her eyes, her arrogance, her entitlement had all vanished. Your Honor, Sarah concluded, turning back to Judge Williams, I formally request that Miss Henderson be remanded into custody pending charges from the U.S. Attorney's Office and the Department of Justice. I will personally ensure this footage reaches them. Judge Williams gave a firm nod. Granted. The bailiff stepped forward, and as the handcuffs clicked around Karen Henderson's wrists, the courtroom erupted not in chaos but in stunned silence. Justice wasn't coming. It had arrived. Karen didn't struggle. She didn't scream. The moment those cold handcuffs snapped around her wrists, she just stood there silent, shaking, hollow-eyed as the bailiff led her away from the defense table. She turned to look at Emma. The fury in her face was gone now. It was terror, shame, complete collapse. Emma didn't flinch. She sat straighter in her pink wheelchair, her tear-streaked face calm now, empowered by the truth finally coming to light. Karen's voice was barely a whisper. Please, I didn't mean it like that. I didn't know. Judge Williams banged the gavel sharply. Miss Henderson, you are hereby held in contempt of court, pending investigation of multiple federal offenses including harassment, discrimination, and emotional abuse of a minor. You are officially in custody. Karen's knees buckled. The bailiff held her steady as she was led through the side door of the courtroom, her once flawless hair now clinging to her sweaty forehead, her eyes darting in panic. She turned one last time before disappearing down the hallway. Emma, I'm sorry. Please don't let her ruin my life over this. But Sarah stepped in front of her daughter, blocking Karen's view. You ruined your own life, she said flatly. I'm just making sure you're held accountable. The door slammed, shut behind Karen, and a wave of emotion swept through the room. Some people clapped, others wept. Reporters rushed to the exits, calling their newsrooms, but in the center of it all sat Emma, no longer trembling, no longer hiding. Her mother kneeled beside her, placing a steady hand on her daughter's shoulder. Emma, Sarah said gently, what happened today wasn't just justice for you. It was a message to every bully out there. You don't get to hurt people and walk away. Emma nodded slowly. She's really going to prison. Yes, sweetheart, Sarah said with quiet strength. For a very long time. News of the courtroom explosion spread like wildfire. By nightfall, clips of Karen Henderson's tirade had gone viral on every major social media platform. The footage showed her towering over a crying disabled child, spewing hatred while a calm, quiet mother watched in silence only to reveal herself as a federal judge moments later. The internet was outraged. Thousands of people commented in support of Emma. Disability advocacy groups rallied around her, launching awareness campaigns. Justice for Emma trended for days. Karen, once proud and untouchable in her gated HOA kingdom, was now the most hated woman online. And it didn't stop there. Her husband filed for divorce within a week, taking their 2 children and moving across the country to escape the scandal. Her employer terminated her immediately, citing her behavior as incompatible with corporate values. Her parents released a public statement condemning her actions and expressing full support for the Martinez family. Karen's bank accounts were frozen. Civil lawsuits followed. Sarah Martinez had already filed a multi-million-dollar claim on Emma's behalf, and every dollar was going to fund disability rights programs across the country. No lawyer would represent Karen anymore. The one who had stood beside her in court the day of her meltdown withdrew from her case, citing irreconcilable moral differences. With no income, no home, and no legal protection, Karen was completely exposed. Meanwhile, Emma was becoming a symbol of strength. Schools invited her to speak. Journalists requested interviews. She appeared on national TV, where she simply said, I want other kids like me to know, you are not a burden, you are not broken, and no matter how loud they scream the truth will stand behind you. The HOA at Maple Grove Estates faced massive public scrutiny. Under pressure, the board removed Karen's name from all official records and restructured entirely. They adopted new inclusive policies and started to fund the Emma Martinez Inclusion Grant to improve accessibility for disabled residents. Everything Karen had built through intimidation and fear was dismantled, brick by brick. Her social life, her influence, her reputational erased. She had tried to destroy a little girl to protect her power. Instead, she made that girl a hero. 3 months later, the federal trial began. Karen Henderson shuffled into the courtroom in an orange jumpsuit. Her once pristine appearance was gone, hair unkempt, face pale and hollow. The woman who had once strutted in high heels now walked with the weight of public disgrace on her shoulders. She sat alone at the defendant's table, no attorney by her side. Not a single legal professional would touch her case after the video surfaced. Across the room sat Sarah Martinez, flanked by a team of top civil rights attorneys. Emma sat proudly next to her mother, wearing the same pink wheelchair Karen had once mocked. The prosecution laid out everything: months of abuse, witness testimony, HOA records, surveillance footage, and of course, the infamous courtroom recording that had sparked it all. When they played the footage, the courtroom grew silent. Jurors looked away. Some even wiped away tears. Even Karen cried as she listened to her own voice calling Emma a freak and a mistake. Expert witnesses testified to the emotional damage Emma had endured: panic attacks, trauma, lost sleep, and fear of public spaces. The evidence was undeniable. Karen tried to defend herself, claiming she was just stressed and trying to protect the neighborhood, but her words fell flat. The courtroom saw her for what she really was: a woman who let her hatred define her actions. It took the jury less than 2 hours to return the verdict: guilty on all charges. Karen was sentenced to 5 years in federal prison plus $3 million in damages to the Martinez family. As she was led away in shackles, she turned to Emma one final time, but the defiance was gone. In its place was regret and the haunting realization that the child she had tried to destroy was now the one standing tall. Years passed, but the memory of that day in court never faded. Karen Henderson served her full 5-year sentence in federal prison. She was required to complete sensitivity training, anger management classes, and public service with disability advocacy programs. Each month, she wrote letters to Emma, apologies filled with guilt, shame, and reflection. Emma never responded, but she kept every letter, not out of forgiveness, out of principle, a reminder of what hatred could do and what justice could overcome. Meanwhile, Emma Martinez thrived. She became a national advocate for disability rights. She traveled to schools, spoke at conferences, and told her story to children who had been told they didn't belong. And every time she spoke, she made one thing clear: you are not a burden, you are not a mistake, and if someone tells you otherwise, you can fight back. She graduated high school as valedictorian. She earned a full scholarship to Harvard Law School, determined to follow in her mother's footsteps, not out of revenge, but because she had seen what the law could do when wielded for justice. The HOA at Maple Grove Estates was forever changed. They rebuilt with compassion, accessibility, and inclusion at the forefront. The Emma Martinez Inclusion Fund grew into a national model. One afternoon, Emma rolled through that same neighborhood park laughing with friends. No fear, no shame. The same pink wheelchair Karen once called ugly now rolled with pride through a community that embraced her. Karen, on the other hand, was released into obscurity. No home, no career, no family. Her name became a cautionary tale in legal textbooks, a reminder of what happens when power is used for hate. Emma had once been called a mistake. Now she was a symbol of hope. And justice had to face hers.